Being in the melt process has really made me dig deeper into how I feel, because it was a time I would do because being in religion, going to church, you just did because they told you to do. Even if you was angry in the church about something, you were told, no, you cannot be angry. It was always said, be angry and sin not. I wanted to hit the person.
Welcome to the CrossCounsel Podcast. We offer a Christ-centered solution that helps people experience lasting freedom, relief, and growth through our MELT process. For nearly 3 decades, we've walked alongside individuals, couples, pastors, ministry leaders, and churches as they pursue healing, growth, and deeper alignment with God's truth and purposes. Negative emotions and painful circumstances do not have to run your life, but lasting freedom and formation often require courage, honesty, humility, and a willingness to invite God into the deeper places of your heart. And as you listen, we hope you won't simply listen to and observe what God is doing in the lives of others, but recognize that you too can participate in the healing, freedom, and transformation God desires for you. All right, let's get into it. As we've done before, I want to give you a little peek inside the CrossCounsel community. One of the things I've appreciated over the years is watching ordinary people wrestle honestly with the kinds of things most of us spend a lot of time trying to hide, sometimes from others and sometimes even from ourselves. Recently, I was out in the woods all day with a friend. We were sitting in a blind, completely decked out in camo. At one point, these 2 young bucks wandered maybe 15 yards from us. One of them just stood there staring. You could tell he knew something wasn't quite right. He couldn't fully see us, but he knew something felt off. Eventually, he just wandered away like, you don't belong here, but you don't seem dangerous. Honestly, I think we do that spiritually and emotionally all the time. We camouflage. We hide. We learn how to sound okay, sometimes even very spiritual. And for a while it works, until it doesn't. One of the things we're going to touch on today is anger toward God, which for many Christians is one of the hardest emotions to admit, not just to others, but to ourselves. Part of us knows it's there, while another part of us has learned that good Christians are not supposed to feel that way. So we suppress it, spiritualize it, camouflage it, or redirect it somewhere else. Before we jump into the discussion, indulge me for just a couple minutes more, because this is also a really important season for CrossCounsel, and we genuinely need your prayers. We've recently added a board member and may be adding another soon. We also have several people within the community who are nearing the point of taking the next step toward becoming a CrossCounsel facilitator, and we do not take that lightly. At the same time, we're feeling some of the growing pains that come from trying to steward this ministry well for the long haul. Personally, I would much rather spend almost all my time doing sessions, teaching, and practicums. That's the part I naturally enjoy most. But we also know the Lord is calling us to think beyond the short term. We say often that transformation is a marathon, not a sprint. Ministry is the same way. I'm not going to be around forever, and this ministry is far too important for it to simply rise and fall on one person. So please pray for wisdom, discernment, healthy leadership, and good structure as we continue to build something that remains healthy for long after any one individual is gone. Also, our annual golf outing is coming up June 19th. Hard to believe this will already be year 15. Honestly, even though our costs have gone up quite a bit over the years, we decided this year to drop the registration cost down to basically our direct cost, around $115 per golfer, because we really want people to be able to participate. We're trying to walk by faith a little there and trust that those who believe in the ministry and are able to be generous will help carry the larger vision forward. So one of the comments you'll hear in today's discussion is something I think many people feel quietly but rarely say it out loud. If you're depressed, people often respond with compassion. But if you're angry, especially angry with God, people often respond by trying to correct you, fix you, or shut the emotion down quickly. Now, obviously, anger can become sinful, destructive, and unhealthy. But one of the things we explore in CrossCounsel is that buried anger usually has a deeper story underneath it. And if we only deal with the reaction without understanding what is driving it, we often miss the deeper issue entirely. Today's episode comes out of a real class discussion within the CrossCounsel community. These are ordinary people wrestling honestly with anger, disappointment, prayer, fear, healing, and what it actually looks like to stop giving polished Christian answers and honestly bring your heart before God. One thing I appreciated was hearing how seriously people engaged the material they were given for the class. Some listened multiple times to the video because they genuinely wanted to wrestle through it instead of just overreacting or reacting too quickly. One of the things that happens often in religious environments is that people slowly learn which emotions feel acceptable and which ones don't. But anger, any kind of anger, even anger toward God, often gets buried, corrected, spiritualized, or hidden. But buried emotions rarely disappear. They usually go somewhere else. Sometimes inward into shame, anxiety, numbness, depression, self-hatred, or disconnection. Sometimes outward into reactions, criticism, withdrawal, control, exhaustion, or relational conflict. One of the things you'll hear throughout this discussion is that healing often begins not when people become more spiritually impressive, but when they finally become honest. You'll also hear that our job is not to defend God. He can handle himself just fine. And our job is not to force theological answers into wounded places before someone is actually able to encounter truth relationally with the Lord himself. People don't need a lecture at first. Sometimes they simply need permission to stop hiding. All right, let's get into it.
Elusive anger towards God. What I liked about is how he talked about the emotions and how some of them are anger is towards someone
Yeah.
and almost everything else is inward, right? So if I'm, anxious or if I'm scared or all the different emotions that you could feel, everything's inward versus anger is pointing out. And I guess I never really thought about that before, but it makes a lot of sense. And I also really found it really interesting that growing up, he was right in that, we really weren't supposed to be angry. And so that
Mhm.
I think is why it's sometimes so hard for us to admit that we're angry
Yeah.
in a session, right? It's like we know we're feeling something, but we don't really want to go there. And it's like, well, you're almost ashamed that you feel angry, so you don't want to talk about it. So I can totally relate to that. I mean, it was just like I can love my mom. She's passed, but I can picture her saying, "Do you want to see angry? I'll show you angry." You know, and things like that, right? You're just like, but yeah, like he made a point, if you're scared of something, our instinct as parents is to be like, "Oh my gosh, what's going on?" Well, I'm here for you. I'll protect you, right? But we don't do the same thing with anger. You see a kid that's angry. I mean, I even think of it now, after listening to that, I think, well, gosh, if I see a kid that's like throwing a fit, I'm like, why isn't that parent doing something about it? Why are they letting them be angry? And then it's like, oh my gosh, I'm like literally doing the same thing here, like trying to make it be a bad thing when in reality it's an emotion that they need to work through, I guess.
Well, then workplaces have anger management classes and all that kind of stuff too. But if somebody's depressed, then they'll give them a support person for that
Yeah.
Mhm.
and encourage them to.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they say for depression is anger turned inward.
Yes.
Mm.
Mm.
So,
I did find it kind of interesting though, the anger, how he differentiated between the anger towards God
Mm.
and the anger towards others. And I guess I hadn't really thought about that before. With the anger towards God, it's a belief that you have. Well, he said if you're angry at someone, that's a solution and that's why it's a roadblock.
yeah.
Because you've created a solution and that's your mind is just like, well, I'm angry and that's it. We're done. But
Hmm.
if it's anger towards God, he said that's not a solution. It's a belief about God and his character.
Right.
Mhm.
Which changes how you relate to God.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you believe God, like they said in the video, if you believe God is not to be trusted, that's going to really affect how you relate to God. You
Mm-hmm.
know what I mean? I mean, for me, I believed God because I in my house it was anger all the time. I don't know that there was like you can't be angry because that's the only emotion we ever felt
Oh,
or
wow.
expressed. Son of it. My belief of God growing up was just this guy with a thunderbolt in his hand, and if you didn't do things right, you're in big trouble. Not love. There was no love involved. It was just like watch out. If you step on a crack, you're done.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, like the
so
law.
yeah, so I
Law was
really didn't have a trusting relationship with God.
Mhm.
I'm sure when God gives you his perspective, it's different than
Mhm.
not being a trusting God.
Yeah.
I think it was something about like she felt his presence there and that kind of calmed her or
Right.
something.
Mhm.
Because
That was right. Yeah.
I had a session like that too about anger. Well, with my parents, they drank a lot when I was younger and driving, and I just felt like my thing was I'm worthless because they don't care if we die and crash or whatever. And then I lifted it up to Jesus, and he just kind of said, "Doesn't matter what happens. I'm here with you. You'll be okay, no matter what
Mhm.
happens." So just like
Mhm.
yeah, just kind of didn't change the situation, but yeah, changed how I was in it.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's huge right there.
That was one of my big ones.
Yeah. It makes a lot of sense. I did agree. Because he said, you definitely do need to be careful there when the anger towards God, because he said you can't be theological to try to resolve the situations. That's the part where I was like, our job is not to convince them. Um, like she was saying that God, I was being molested or whatever, right? And that God didn't care, or God didn't try to save me and things like that. And from a theological perspective, you could rattle off scripture to be like, God's always with you and he was carrying you through this, right? And all of that, but that's not our job to give them that perspective. It's more to guide. And the other thing I put, it's not my job to defend God because he can do that himself.
Yes.
Well, it doesn't change their heart. We can't tell them any more than they can tell themselves. It's
Mhm.
only God's the only one that can reveal his truth and change their heart.
Right. Right.
I love it how we just step out of the way. We just get out of the way and let them go to battle with God, and
Yeah.
it can be beautiful, the outcome. And it has made me realize if we don't do that, then that's not going to solidify the relationship with God. It's got to be one-on-one.
Yeah.
Whatever we can say, it's never going to probably convince them anyway.
Right. For sure. Yeah, I think that's the hardest thing about being a facilitator is just to kind of, like you said, just get out of the way and like
Mm.
let Jesus be Jesus. Like, let it happen.
Yeah.
So,
I don't know. I'd like to hear y'all's take on this or Steve's, but I know farther back, I would just say, well, why don't you just tell him what you think right now? Let's just have it, just
Mhm.
I didn't say have it out with him, but I just said, just let him know. He can handle it. And they just started rattling off, just telling him. And I don't remember what happened, but they started crying, and then the Lord started showing them things, and then they just calmed down, and it was amazing. And I'm like, phew, because they just had all this anger, and but they were afraid to express it. And I said, hey, he can handle it. You can tell him whatever you want.
mhm.
And that was so freeing for them.
Mhm.
I think, yeah, just it kind of runs parallel for me. I thought it was a different perspective when someone had pointed out that the process of confession is you're telling God something he already knows.
Right.
And the point of them framing it that way is like, why would you avoid it? Because it's really just turning your heart and a willingness to say those things. because he already knows your heart. So I think there's, just like in confession and just like in admitting, you know what, I am angry at you. That's a valuable part of the process of verbalizing it, even if he already knows. That's an important part of the process. But yeah, it's like, don't, I think sometimes people tend to back down because we know that holding anger against God is wrong. Like, well, I shouldn't feel that way, or it falls into that category of anger is bad. And really it's just, yeah, it keeps us stuck.
Yeah, I think kind of to your point, Justine, too, even like in my prayer life, I've really been trying to be more real with God. It's just like, man, this is what I'm feeling right now. Like there's something about, like the Our Father or other prayers, but there's also something really valuable in just being who you are with God.
Yeah, rather than just
Yeah.
saying the things that maybe we think he wants to hear,
Right,
if it's not really coming from the heart. How
right.
valuable is that?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think God really loves when we're authentic, when we're just like, yeah, not trying to be all churchy, just be the thing for me, I think it's I didn't grow up in like a church, really. So I never have really come across it that way. My conversations with God have always really just been like, I mean, yeah, I'll say the Our Father and Serenity Prayer, things like that. I feel the best communication is just when I'm like, dude, I'm bumming, this sucks, whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
I don't know if I mentioned this. It's been a few months ago, maybe. I was overwhelmed. Well, I knew it was coming up to do taxes, and there were things with the house that were going wrong, and all these things that a lot of them John would have been tending to. And I just got so upset, and I knew it was angry at God. But I just started crying and saying, "Why did you leave me? Why didn't you take me and leave John? Why did he have to be the one to go?" And I realized later, wow, I was really letting him have it. I just I was just carrying on. And then it was either that day or the next day. I was in the car and I was trying to find some good worship music.
Yeah.
And I found this song called One More Day. I don't know if y'all have heard of it.
Mm.
It's beautiful, but he's going on about, it's thinking about I'm a fighter caught in a struggle, a survivor rising above it. I'm all of these things, but mostly I'm thankful. But and then it says, because you gave me one more day to say I love you. And there's a part when the night was closing in on me, didn't know if I'd see the morning. You held on to me, and Jesus, I'm grateful. What he started showing me is I gave you one more day, and I gave you another day, and I'm not finished with you yet. And it suddenly I realized, oh yeah, that's why you're God and I'm not. Because you knew that I had things to do. You knew whatever it is, that was the reason you took John and left me here. And it just settled it in my spirit. And I could step back and go, okay, I need to be grateful and thankful that I have more time here. That I get to see my kids and they get to be with me. And so it was just settled into my heart. And I thought, wow. But, when I was little and I would throw a fit and get mad at my dad because he was so harsh and sometimes abusive, and I could get like slapped across the face or shoved down, and I was terrified. So for a long time, I didn't dare get mad at God, because I was, how we sometimes consider our earthly father, the same way. And I was probably terrified to just tell him exactly what I felt, even though he already knows it.
Yeah.
Can't hide it. But now every time I hear that song, I just start crying. I'm just grateful that he gave me more days. So it's
Praise God.
amazing how he can do that in your heart.
anyone else have any other thoughts or anything about the video? I don't know if you guys have seen that before or not.
It was really good because it really helped me see as everyone was saying earlier, you can't prompt nobody. From my from my previous work was always to help, but to know now to just be still and let them really go forward. Because what he did about God was interesting, because for me, not ever having a father or raised with a father, God was like somewhere out in the outer space for me. And
Mm,
so the deal, I had brothers, but it's not having like a father, someone to protect you and to do that. Even getting married, I had a hard time with that, because I was always the one who had to do everything, even when I raised my sons, because to have some male to be a protector, to take care, that was strange for me. And
mm,
in the last, I say, 8 years, to really know God is near was really for me to really begin to work at it, because I didn't know that. And here to be angry with God and knowing how that he all, like as Jill said, he already knows. But when I grew up, it was always, you never express feelings, you just stuff it. And
Mhm.
now in the last, say, 6 years, learning how to say how I feel and to feel it is different and it's new. So I have to, I'm learning, okay, Father, this is how I feel, Father. Father God, this is what I'm overwhelmed with something, or this is too much. So it's new for me to really say, and in being in the melt process is really make me dig deeper into how I feel, because it was a time I would do, because being in religion, going to church, you just did because they told you to do. Even if you was angry in the church about something, you were told, no, you cannot be angry. It was always said, be angry and sin not. I wanted to hit the person
Oh,
because that was part of how I came up. You had to protect yourself. But being restrained like that always kept everything boiling. And the least little thing somebody did, I would fly off about it, but not knowing these are feelings that has to come out. And just like about a couple of months ago, my grandson was angry about something that happened. I let him go into the rage of feeling it. I said, I just let him, because he's 8 years. I just let him say all he had to say. He was
Yeah.
angry. He was angry that he was shaking. I let him let it all came out because it need to come
Mhm.
out.
yeah,
You will come up as an adult, and you see as adults, when you do that, you fly off on things. It can be nothing that's major, but you learn that feelings do count. And I like what he said when you were saying, Jose, anger is always towards someone.
right.
And then with me, a lot of time, our anger was always towards me. Okay, you messed up. And I always said that, you can't do this. You're not equipped. You're not able. I don't say those things no more. I always say, now I can do this. I know I can do it. I have to know when my limitations is and know I can't go no further. So in this, it did a lot and let me know that how to deal with someone when someone is angry, or even if I'm angry with God about something, to just be honest about it and just feel it. And so this was really good, because I struggled with understanding it in the beginning. I listened to it a couple of times because
Me
I
too.
struggled with understanding it. And then after I sat the third time around, I began to get it.
yeah, I appreciate you bringing this one up because I knew somewhere in one of the videos, whether it was with Steve or Ed, somewhere there were certain ways to ask or hint about it possibly being anger. And so I thought, man, I'm keeping this with me all the time. Is there any
Mm.
portion of what you're feeling right now being felt toward any person or anything? I thought
Right.
that is such a good question.
Right.
Yeah, it is really good.
Yeah, it was good to find that question again.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and I think as we work through some of those things too, like even as a group, right? Like, we're obviously hearing each other's sessions and everything, and just it's good that I think as a group we're comfortable with being able to have those discussions and in with God in our session, right? Like we're not scared about that because, oh, Susie's listening to me and now she's going to think this of me, but we're all going through the same process. We're all trying to heal. And I think that's awesome that I don't feel like any of us hesitate, which is good.
Yeah.
As you just heard, one of the great struggles for many people is not simply pain itself, but the feeling that they have to hide that pain from God, clean themselves up spiritually, or pretend they're doing better than they actually are before they can honestly come before Him. And over time, that creates a split inside of us. One part learns that the right Christian language works. Have the right verses, know the right answers. Meanwhile, another part of the heart may still be carrying anger, fear, shame, disappointment, grief, or exhaustion underneath the surface. And eventually that disconnect catches up with us. One thing that I appreciated about the discussion is that these weren't people trying to glorify anger or justify sin. They were learning how to stop hiding. Because buried emotions do not stay buried forever. They leak somewhere. And this is one reason we often say at CrossCounsel that our emotions are not the enemy. They are more like a barometer. They point towards something deeper, a wound, a fear, a painful belief, or a lie we've come to live from. And many times anger itself is not the deepest issue. It's the warning light. It's the smoke. It's the doorway. One of the things I've said for years is that I wish I'd understood 3 things much earlier in life. First, what it really means to let Jesus actually be Jesus, instead of trying to manage life through fear, performance, image, or control. Second, the profound difference between the head and the heart. A person can know something intellectually for years while their heart still lives out of fear, shame, self-protection, or painful conclusions. And third, how anger actually works and how often it points towards something deeper underneath the surface. Now, that does not mean emotions become the authority. Feelings alone do not determine the truth, but pretending they are not there does not produce transformation either. And we always run the risk that people listen to a podcast like this, hear a teaching, gain some insight, or even have an emotional moment with God and assume they've fully dealt with the deeper issues underneath. Sometimes those things are important starting points, but information alone is not transformation. Because if we only suppress behavior, quote verses at ourselves, or paint over what's happening internally without dealing with what's underneath, it's a little like painting over mold and convincing ourselves we fixed the problem. Eventually, it comes seeping back through the wall. And often healing begins with something very simple. Lord, this is honestly where I am. You don't have to be polished. You don't have to be rehearsed. You don't have to clean yourself up. Just be honest. Bringing our hearts into the light so that the Lord can meet us there with His truth, His presence, and His love. Thank you for listening to the CrossCounsel Podcast. We invite you to visit CrossCounsel.com to learn more about genuine healing and becoming a more useful instrument in God's kingdom purposes. Be sure to like, subscribe, rate, and share this podcast. It helps others discover the same potential for hope and healing found only in Jesus. Again, thank you for listening.